So I thought what we'd do is we'd begin with a test to see how well your mind is working. There was a body of water, and over it there was a reed, and there were 5 frogs hanging on the reed. Well, it was pretty hot out, so 4 of them got the idea it might be nice to go for a swim. How many are left? I know you look at it. 1? No. There's 5 left. See, it's one thing to get all the information. It's one thing to sit here in 6 lectures and take lots of notes and to hear all these wonderful things. It's another thing to do them. And if you don't do them, you're just a hot frog. So what we want us to do is at least try a couple of the things as you go through this life. Now, I've said this before, I will say it again, old age is not a disease. But here's the problem in our society. We expect people, as they get old, to start losing their memory. Is that what we expect? Is that what we are seeing? We see this. So is it a problem with old age? No, it's a problem with what we do with ourselves as we start to get older. We should never start to lose our memories. As a matter of fact, this is a study done at Rush University in the United States. It says memory loss is always a sign of disease or injury, some type of disease process. I'm going to add one more thing to this. Disease and injury or lack of use. How many of you ever had a broken bone? Okay? You had your arm or your leg in a cast, right? Sometimes. When they cut the cast off, since your leg had been resting or your arm had been resting for 6 or 8 weeks, was it strong and ready to go? No, it was weak as water. The only way we make our muscles strong is by exercising the muscles. Okay? Ways to improve the memory. That's what we want to find out. How can we improve the memory all the way through our whole lives? And there are ways to do it, and I'm glad for that. Memory. What is memory? It is the mental activity of recalling information that you have learned somewhere along the lines. But there's different types of memories. We're going to look at the different types of memory. We have short-term memory. And some people's short-term memory is really, really short. This type of short-term memory is if someone gives you their phone number, if you go right away and call it or write it down, it stays with you. But if someone tells you their phone number, 10 minutes later, it's out of your mind. There's something interesting about phone numbers, though. This is what science tells us. The brain has an easier time remembering sequences of 10 numbers than 11 or 12. So this is not all that hard to do, but we usually forget pretty fast the phone numbers. Also, names. Someone tells you, I want you to go down to the store, you get on such and such street, and turn right on such and such street. If you don't write it down, your short-term memory is going to dump it out. All kinds of things, our short-term memory. Meeting people, our conversations. Knowing somebody's name after being introduced. How many of you can really remember a person's name? They walk in, here's your name, and you've got it 10 minutes later. Anyone here? I once I took a group of educators to a Marine Corps base in America. There was about 80 of us. We had a reception in the general's house. The general stands there. To his left, he's got what's called an aide. The aide would ask your name. My name is Don Miller. He'd sit there and say, General, this is Don Miller. He'd say, nice to meet you, Don Miller. Then he'd go to the next one and the next one. That night, as we were leaving, he knew everybody's name. He said goodbye by our names. Now, how do you do this? You've got to train your mind to do it. That's pretty hard to do. But we forget the names very fast. And this really hurts me. How many are in the computers? How many passwords do you have? You've got passwords for everything. I mean, I got one password for my computer, one for Delta Airlines, one for Google, I got probably 20 different passwords. Can you tell me what all your passwords are right now? I can't. I've got them written down in code so no one can steal my piece of paper and get them all over my accounts. But our short-term memory cannot hold on to these types of things. And here's one even more common. Where did I put the keys? Anyone have that problem? You walk in, you lay your keys down, and pretty soon, you look all over the house for the keys. I'm even worse sometimes. I have spent a half hour looking for my glasses and found them right here. Now, when I can't find my glasses, subconsciously, the first thing I do is do this. If I feel them, yes, I found my glasses. But our short-term memories are very short. Then we have our long-term memories. And they are based on certain life experiences. One would be very personal, meaningful things. Some of you are parents. Do you remember the night your first child was born? Do you remember everything about that night?
Yeah.
Do you remember what you had to eat? Do you remember what the weather was like? Do you remember just the feeling when I became a father? I have that all in my mind. It's like it happened yesterday, but it happened in 1981. Unbelievable. When you graduated, I still graduating from college. I'm still there in the auditorium. I remember everything about it. These I try to forget. Weddings. Now, if you are still married, don't forget your anniversary. But most people don't forget these significant events. There are some other ones. These are the ones that have vital information that you have to have. When I was in the military, you had to memorize your service number. You had to memorize your rifle serial number. You had to memorize the 11 general orders. And you had to do it, or that drill instructor was going to be right in your face, hurting you. So you had to do this. If you go to medical school, you've got to learn the cranial nerves. And the way they do it is they make it into an acronym. You know, these series of letters. But everyone who goes to medical school learns the cranial nerves. They've got to do it. Yeah. How about those of you who type? Now, I have a confession to make. I've never learned to type. I still hunt and peck. My hands are going all over the place. But someone who really knows how to type, they can sit there and look at the book and type. They can be talking to you and type because it's in their long-term memory. We can train that long-term memory. We need to do this. Yeah, you learn at the very beginning, at least why it's in English, your home row. But there are other type of long-term memory which are based on very important historical events. Now, I would have tried to find some important historical events here in Iceland, but I wouldn't know how to do it. But in America, if you were alive on December 2nd, 1941, and you heard about the bombing of Pearl Harbor, everyone I've talked to, my mother, everybody knows exactly what they were doing, who they were with, who told them, what they felt like when that happened. Well, it's seared. And I wish I could do that with everything. I was sitting in Mr. Pitcher's botany class. He left the room, went into the closet, which hooked up to another classroom. He came back out with this very somber look on his face. He said, President Kennedy has just been shot. They let school out early. I walked home with Brad Piner. I remember everything about that event. That was 63. That's a huge long time ago. I remember exactly what I was doing and who I was with when man first stepped on the moon. These are significant things. I remember I was sitting in my office My mother calls me on the phone. She says, have you heard what's happened? I said, no. She says, turn on the news. And everyone in America knows what they were doing when the planes flew into the Twin Towers and in the Pentagon. So these are long-term events, but you have very few of these things in your life. Memory comes in basically 3 stages. We've got to look at these 3 different stages and try to make sure we have all these things going. The first one is we've got to learn to concentrate on what we're learning. The more you concentrate, the more you're building a new pathway in your brain to recall it. Children, when you're complaining to them, it goes one ear and out the other. They're not concentrating on what the parents say. But how about in school? There's all those students just looking at you, but what's going on in their minds? Oh, they're thinking about sports, they're thinking about food, they're thinking about Leonardo DiCaprio. And when they do this, they're not going to remember anything that they're trying to learn. To learn, you have to concentrate. Now, that said, why is it that children learn languages easier than adults? Have you ever thought about that? Are they smarter than adults? They're not smarter than adults. But for some reason, a child can pick up a language in no time at all. And here's the reason why. As we get older, we start to discriminate about what's in our environment. I am in a different language group almost every month of the year. So I'm hearing Chinese, I'm hearing Japanese, I'm hearing Portuguese, I'm hearing Spanish. And if I were trying to listen and concentrate on all those things, I would probably go crazy. So what I do, when someone's talking in another language, I don't even hear them. It does not even affect my mind. For a child, everything makes sense. I mean, a child, as a baby in the cradle, you're talking to them in whatever language you're talking to them. They start to understand what you're saying because they're focused. Have you ever noticed in a small baby, when you're talking to them, they're looking right at you? They're focused, they're concentrated. That's why children learn it so much easier. Okay. The next thing is, we've got to consolidate the information that we've learned. If you have, the other day I was working on a file on my computer, and sometimes when I'm saving it, I just say save, and it puts it in the last folder I had opened, which means I cannot find it again. I've got to put it where I want it. If you have a file cabinet, and you've got a file, if you just walked up to the file cabinet, pull it open, stuff it in there, and close the file cabinet, and then next week you need that file, can you find it? You cannot find it. So what we need to do is somehow, through our concentration and consolidation, put it where it belongs. Now, one way that we can facilitate this, if a person goes to bed at the right time at night, that information is going to be filed right where it belongs to be filed. Now we're talking about well before midnight going to sleep. All that you're learning is put away in a nice, neat package. If you stay up late, past midnight, all the information that you have learned is scattered throughout your brain. They did a number of studies on university students. A university student, 5 days, they study hard, they learn, they go to bed on time. But at least one day of the weekend, they go out and party. And on that one night of partying, they stay up late. They have found that they lose between 70 and 90% of what they have cataloged into their brain. And they have to learn it again. That's why they have such a hard time. If we would concentrate on what we're doing, get good night's rest every night. Now another thing that hurts us in our memory retention is having a messy environment. And almost everybody, in America we call this a junk drawer. If you have a junk drawer, if you have a junk kitchen, if you have a junk garage, your information is not being put away in such a way that your long-term memory can recall it. Everything in our environment becomes It has to be neat. There is a biblical principle. It says, it's 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18. By beholding, you become changed into the same image. If what you see all the time is a mess, your brain reflects what you're watching. We need to clean up our environment. We need to make sure everything is put away right. Okay? And then the next part is, the first part was we need to concentrate. The second thing is we need to consolidate. Then the hard part is to retrieve it when you need it. And this gets to be that part that the more you think about it, the more you look at it, the more you are exposed to it, the more firm it becomes in your memory. That's what really makes it. It's like when you walk out through the grass. The more you walk, and everyone walks the same way, pretty soon you have a path going. You didn't dig it up, you didn't put any insecticide or herbicides, it just happened that way. How many of you, when you tie your shoes, have to go right over left, make a loop, rabbit comes out of the hole, goes around and goes back in? Does anyone have to do that here? Because you've done it so many times, you can do it while you're chewing gum, talking, and listening to some music. And you can tie your shoes without even thinking about it. That's when you have got good retrieval. And there are certain things in each one of your life which comes back just like that because you have focused on this thing. These things are important to you. Now, it would be nice if we could just go to a computer shop and get a memory chip to stick in our brain and have just increase our memory by a terabyte or something. It doesn't work that way. But there are ways that we can train our brain to be stronger and to have a better memory. If you want to build strong muscles, what do you have to do with them? You've got to exercise. Did you realize that science is telling us that if we want to exercise the brain, besides thinking, besides studying, there's another way that we can strengthen our brain, and that is with aerobic exercise. Science is telling us that if we engage in aerobic exercise, that means exercise that gets our heart beating and our respiration going, it helps your brain. The more a person exercises, the more intelligent they will become. The better their brain will be working. Another nice study that was done that about exercising your body, it says doing all these different things will not only stop sometimes memory loss, it will start to recover memory that's already been lost. You can turn your brain around. Recommendation, you start turning it around today. Don't say, well, I don't want to do it now, maybe next week or next month. Next week or next month, if your memory's already on the way out, you probably will forget to do it, and your memory will be gone one of these days. Another interesting study. This was done in a university in America. It says if a person does 45 to 60 minutes of exercise 4 days a week for 6 months, they stop and they reverse memory loss. Another interesting study. Again, exercise will help stop memory loss, which usually starts when you're about age 40. They've done other studies with animals. They found in animals that they exercise become more intelligent, more easy to train. So if it works for the animals, it should work for us. Another way, even better than this, is what we call multitasking. If you have some type of an exercise that you do, and you can safely do some type of reading or studying at the same time, it makes your brain stronger because you've got both of the directions going. Years ago, I used to go for a long bicycle ride every afternoon. And I'd go to my desk and I'd get a little stack of Bible verses. And I was riding out in the country, nothing to worry about. And I'd be pedaling along and I'd just take a glance at the Bible verse. And I usually have about 6 Bible verses. My bike ride, an hour and a half to 2 hours long. By the time I got home, I had all the verses memorized, and they had all come together in a very interesting way that I could have preached a sermon on it right then. So basically, multitasking, doing two things at one time is great. Another way to grow your brain is doing crossword puzzles, or does anyone know what Sudoku is? Right? It's good stuff. I've got a sister who was always working Sudoku. My grandmother was always doing one of two things. She was working crossword puzzles and studying the Bible. I remember the last time I saw her, she lived by herself, she drove her own car, she still worked, she took care of old people. She was 96 years old. She had gone to the University of Cincinnati before World War I. She took one semester of German, and she still remembered the German from 1915. Her mind was as sharp as a mind could be. That's what our minds can be. My grandmother wasn't some special woman. She had great longevity. Her mother died at 96. My grandmother died at 96. I'm hoping I get at least that far. But if we stretch our minds around these things, but if you don't like either of those two things, there's other. Now this is what science is recommending. Play some types of games. Scrabble. My mother is a genius with Scrabble. Sometimes when I call my mother, she'll say, who is this? I say, this is Don. Oh, Don, yeah. If you play her Scrabble, though, she'll kill you. She always wins. She's got a very good mind for the Scrabble. So anything that's requiring reading books. Now, let me make a qualification there. It's good to read books. I showed a picture yesterday of a guy by the name of Ben Carson. Ben Carson is a pediatric neurosurgeon. Brilliant man. When he was in the 5th grade, his class voted him the dumbest boy in the world. He was from a single mother family. His mother had married his father at 13 years of age. He left shortly thereafter. She was raising 2 boys, and this one particular boy, Ben Carson, had a very bad, he could not control his anger, and he was stupid. He watched television all the time. But one day his mother got a premonition of what she needed to do. She called her 2 sons in, and she says, we're going to change things around here now. One, you get to watch television a half hour a week. They were watching 4 hours a day, a half hour a week. And both of you have to read 2 books every week and give me a book report, a written book report. They didn't know that she couldn't read. So the boys, they hated it. For the first month or 2, they absolutely hated this job, reading a book. When after a few months, the world started opening up. When he graduated from high school, I think he was first in his class. He went to Yale University. He went to medical school in Michigan, and at 32 was the head of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins University. And he says it was all because his mother made them read books. It's amazing. Your children, turn off the TV. Get them away from the games. Get them good books. Don't give them Harry Potter. Harry Potter is training children to be like Harry Potter. You know what Harry Potter was, right? Okay? Matter of fact, the woman who wrote the book, she gets many letters. And one of the main questions she gets, how can I go to Harry Potter school? How can I go to Hogwarts? That's what they want to do. And since those books came out, the interest of young people in the occult has skyrocketed. Now, Harry Potter's a long way away. Now we're into a series, I think, maybe we're beyond that, a series called Twilight. Have you heard about Twilight? Vampires. This is what our children are being raised on today. If you have children, grandchildren, nieces or nephews, whatever it is, get them good history books, biography books, autobiography books. It's the best thing in the world you can do for them. What else can you do to grow your brain? If you stimulate the nerves at the end of your fingers, I don't know how this works, it causes the brain to be more functional. So if you knit, and you've been knitting every night, or hey, why don't you learn to use the chopsticks? If you learn to use the chopsticks, it makes your brain more cognizant. You're going to drop a little bit of food every once in a while, but it's a good thing to learn how to do these things. Another thing which helps the brain grow, if you brush your teeth with your right hand, switch to your left hand. Now you'll probably bang yourself a lot, but changing from right hemisphere to left hemisphere will do a lot to making your brain grow. These are just simple things that science is telling us that we can do. I've got a thing I do when I'm driving in America to try to sharpen my mind. As a car passes me, I look at their license plate. What I try to do is, as they're going by, I just look at it very quickly, and then I try to recall it without having to sit there and say, okay, this. No, really quick. Picking it up, just like our license plates are no longer than 8 characters long. Okay? And I see if I can pick it up like that. But it's more than this. Then I see how many I can memorize in a row before I start beginning the first ones. So anything you can do. Another thing that will help your brain remember things is get as many senses involved as you can. It's sort of hard to get the sense of touch involved in the learning process, but if you hear things, if you speak them yourself, if you see them, very lot of retentions going to be taking place in your mind. There are things that make us lose our memory. One of them is the plaques between our teeth. So they recommend that we floss our teeth every day because the plaques in our teeth can cause a immune response in the body which will block good brain flow, blood flow to the brain, and therefore impair your memory. Another thing we can do for our memory is omega-3 fatty acids. We realize that if a person's depressed, they need omega-3. We all need omega-3s. As I've already told you a few times, the way that we are built, the way nature is, it's usually in a ratio of 2 6s to 1 3. That's the best way. But we've got a problem in our society. We go away from the omega-3s and we go very heavy in the omega-6s. Peanut oils, sunflower oils, corn oils, soybean oil, these things, cottonseed oil, these things are not healthy for the body. As I've talked before when we talked about cancer, omega-6 fatty acids, if they get inside the cell and the cell is cancerous, it accelerates the growth of the cancer. But omega-3 fatty acids will clean the omega-6s out of the body. Recommendation, reduce your intake of oil. You're not going to eat a sunflower. You might eat some sunflower seeds, but you're not going to eat a sunflower. I haven't seen anyone yet chewing on their shirt, their cotton shirt. We need to be eating foods that are high in omega-3 fatty acids. When we have omega-6 fatty acids, it causes our blood to clot more. If our blood clots, that leads to strokes and to heart attacks. Now, in Iceland and many other places, they consider the best source of omega-3s to be cold water fish. They're often a cold water fish. Think of it as an omega-3 is an essential fatty acid. What's that basically mean? The body can't produce it. The fish's body can't produce it. A bird's body can't produce it. The human body cannot produce it. So basically, the fish had to get the omega-3s from the plants living in the ocean. So if you want to get good omega-3s in your body, right? Olives will have some. Flaxseed, probably one of the best. Tofu, very good with omega-3s. Walnuts, excellent omega-3s. Seaweed. This is the type of seaweed I eat all the time in America. It's called nori. We just went to an Asian market today, and I'm sure that they've got nori in there. It's very nice. It gives an interesting flavor to your food. And flax oil, if you want to use oil, well, let me say something about that flax oil. Flax oil is the best oil that there is. But the better the oil, the more fragile it is. It will go rancid. It will oxidize very quickly. And we mentioned this the other day. 3 things are an enemy to good oils. Do you remember what those were? Light, heat, and oxygen. So what do? You put your oil in your refrigerator. If it's in a plastic bottle, when you use some, you squeeze the bottle until the oil's up to the top. Then you put the lid on. Oxygen's gone, refrigerator dark, refrigerator cold. If you have a glass jar of flaxseed oil, get yourself some very clean pebbles or some marbles. Clean the marbles very well, keep a bag of them in the refrigerator. When you use some of your flaxseed, drop marbles in until the oil is back up to the top. And you will not destroy your good oils. Less age-related memory loss and Alzheimer's, and less depression and a quicker mind if people eat more of the omega-3s. That's a lot of benefits from omega-3s. Another thing we need to do is a restful night's sleep. We get a good night of rest, it does a lot for our memory the next day. But it needs to be before midnight, well before midnight, to get the proper hormones produced in your mind. Now, we've talked about this a couple of times. Radio frequency. Another study done at London University. Microwave action, which is basically what RF is. It's waves coming in and focused on that little phone, which is going to go into the brain. It can cross, this RF can cross the blood-brain barrier and change your brain, causing tumors. And it's well documented now that people who have a cell phone all the time have more brain tumors. But that's just part of the problem. What's the purpose of a red blood cell? What's its main purpose?
To take up oxygen.
It transports oxygen. That's right. Now, the nice thing about red blood cells is they are polarized. The outer part of the red blood cell is positive, the inside is negative. What happens if those cells get close to each other? What's going to happen? They're going to repel, right? But if you use a cell phone, it destroys the polarity, and then when they start getting close together, they stick. Now, if you get a bunch of red blood cells sticking together, how much oxygen can they carry? How many small capillaries can they get through? If you have a dark field microscope, and you can do live blood analysis, this is a picture of somebody's blood before they use the cell phone. The red blood cells, you have a few of them are close to each other, but it's pretty much loose. It's nicely flowing. If a person makes a 90-second cell phone call, this is what their blood cells look like. 90 seconds. Which means they are not getting good oxygen, they're not getting good circulation. After 20 minutes, it's still there. It takes 40 minutes to get back to normal. And you say, well, I don't use a cell phone. If I am standing 2 meters from you and I use a cell phone, it does the same thing to you. The RF being focused in that area. So, am I telling you to get rid of your cell phones? I don't want to be crucified. But here's what I am saying. You can buy a special case for your cell phone with a lead back, and you carry it on your body with the lead near your body. And then you get a cable that moves the sound to your head by electrical waves, not radio waves.